Hey, it's Michael again here at Interstate PR in my home studio office. And I am coming to you this evening with another friend of mine that I know. His name is Jeremy Arcinas, and he is a project manager. Um, and he's got some great ideas and great tips about working at home. He also has young children. He has one in school right now and can give some tips and ideas about how to work with at home while you're working with your children and helping them out too. So I'm going to bring Jeremy in on the line. Hey, Jeremy, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Thanks for being on. How's working at home going for you?
Oh, we're getting by. These are truly unprecedented times that we're all working through together, but we're getting by.
Right? Unprecedented. That and uncertainty are like the words of 2020, aren't they? Like everybody's
Right.
using them now.
Uh,
It's an awesome thing. So you are a project manager,
mhm.
and you manage projects for a major corporation, and you keep people moving and going along. Why don't you tell me? Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do and some tips and trips for people who are trying to work from home right now and be productive?
Sure, sure. Yeah, my name is Jeremy Arcinas. I'm a project manager with Sutter Health, one of the major hospital systems here in California. I work in their IT arena, managing projects for all the different systems, technologies used not just to run the hospitals, but just the enterprise in general. And in general, my role is to help manage the different teams, bring them together in coordinated efforts to either do maintenance or deploy new products in service to the hospital systems. And like I said, these are unprecedented times that we're in. I mean, even now, there's many folks from our IT arena that already work from home, at least part time. And so being at home is not anything that was very new ground for us, but certainly for all of us being home 100% of the time and having a lot of our hospital resources, our project resources that would normally be dedicated to deploying new modules or technologies are have been all rediverted for the past month to COVID-19 response measures for the Sutter Health hospitals. And so trying to work through that has been a challenge, but I think that our organization is making the most of that, and being able to still give our patients good care.
And that's great. We hear a lot of great things about all the healthcare systems here in Sacramento and what they're doing to support patients during this time. Not only patients who've been diagnosed positive with COVID-19, but other patients who need healthcare
Mhm.
options too. So that's great. So when thinking about working at home and doing this type of stuff and really planning your day out,
Mhm.
what's some suggestions that you would have for somebody who is used to going to their office from, working
Mhm.
that 9 to 5 job? They show up at 9 to 5. It's funny because it's really 8 to 5, right? But they show up in the morning, they park at their desk, and they know what they're going to do.
Mhm.
What's some of and now they're in a whole different situation, right? They're in a desk, a cubicle, whatever. They're pulling out a laptop or something, and they're working at their kitchen
Mhm.
table. What are some things and tips that you might have to help people stay focused and get work done and be productive there at
Sure.
home?
Well, in general, there are three big things that I focus on in order to still bring service to the organization, and as well as take care of things not just professionally but also domestically. Since, like many working folks, we have distance learning, we've got children in the home, and trying to balance all those things. So you kind of hit the nail on the head right with your first question there, Michael. The first one: how do you stay focused? It's an agenda. That's the very first thing that I set out, as far as what are we going to accomplish with my day. Have a plan of what my day is going to look like, as far as your deliverables, as far as the tasks that you have at hand, as far as the meetings or the resources that you have available to you. And that even goes real far as in regard to helping my daughter, who is also doing distance learning right now, kind of stay focused on task. It's certainly not the same as having a um, normal work environment where you have all of your resources there at the cubes with you. It's not the same as being in a classroom with a one-on-one instruction from a teacher who's just dedicated to that, but at least certainly having a goal as opposed to kind of sitting around and just letting yourself get distracted by things that might be at home or even uncertainty or fears about what's going on right now. All those things can certainly derail your momentum. I have experienced that firsthand. Um, but by that same token, as much as you should have an agenda, have something to start off with. The next tip that I offer is to make sure that you reflect and you reprioritize as necessary. It basically it's saying that you have your plan, you had your goal, you set out your day, so you have some direction, but you have to be open and flexible. You got to be agile to be able to look at, okay, this is what I said we need to do today, but is this what I can do today? Is it really feasible? In my arena of project work, I have certain activities that we had been planning for that should be taking place during this month, but a lot of our resources, our technical resources, especially, like I said, have been rediverted to helping deploy telemedicine for a lot of our providers. And so they're not available to go deploy credit card machines, for example, in some of our surgery centers that I've been working on. So if I can't do that, what can I do in order to still be as productive as possible? And if that means that we really just have to reprioritize and help our stakeholders understand that we have to amend the plans or readjust expectations of our timelines, that's one thing that, at least in my arena, as far as being a project manager, working with my management, that we seek to do to make sure that everybody is just on the same page about where are our true priorities. But that all being said, the number one thing that I definitely recommend, even more than just having an agenda and even more than being able to be agile and flexible, is just communicate, right? Just communicate. And in fact, it's timely that I was being made to think about this because in our most recent department meetings, that's one of the tips that our leaders have been saying to us, that they recognize that during these times where we're accustomed to being able to either via phone or in-person meetings, be able to really interact with the teams, we're at a place where for a lot of us, we're very much isolated. We're not having that same kind of interaction. And what does that do to us, in terms of a mental health perspective? What does that do to us in terms of professional work momentum? So communicate. And by that, I mean making sure that you're open about your bandwidth, making sure that you're open, like I said, with your stakeholders or heck, your families, your management, as far as this is what I've got going on. These are the things that are not feasible to accomplish today. These are the things that are feasible to accomplish. And heck, don't be afraid to even say, these are the things that I might need help with or I'm struggling with, because certainly in these times where we are the most separated, these are the times where we have to make sure that we don't let ourselves get disconnected. We must absolutely, not even just professionally, but personally, spiritually, whatever. We need to all kind of stick together in order to really get through these times.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? You bring up communicating, and over the last few years, one of the big things that everybody's been talking about is getting out of our silos, right? It's been such a buzzword for the last 5 or 6 years about how people work in silos, and as maybe you're seeing this now as a project manager, how do you see that? Are people trending back because they're working from home and because they're not connected with a team on an ongoing basis? Are people starting to go back towards being in these silos, if you will? Or is communication really opening up because we're using things like streaming video and with Zoom calls and FaceTime and Google Hangouts, and I mean the list goes on and on, right? Yeah, Yammer, Microsoft Teams, et cetera, et cetera. Not to plug one product over another, but are you seeing people shifting towards silos again, or are you seeing a lot of people being in good communication because of the things that you talked about, like the prioritizing, the agenda, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
What are you seeing?
I'd say I'm seeing a mix of both. I definitely say it's more of the latter than the former. Folks are going out of their way, um, at least in our area of the business, to remain in contact with one another, and not just management, doing bed checks. Hey, are you really being productive, telecommuting, but also, um, like I said, from a resource perspective, there's many of our teams that right now we're not able to engage, or at least ask them to do the normal day-to-day business things that we can do. But there is latitude with other teams, and so again, reprioritizing what is it that we can do. If it's a time to kind of catch up on our administrative paperwork, if it's time to do some audits, if it's a time to just get on the phone and work with some of our stakeholders and address some of those questions that we hadn't been able to get to previously because we were so busy, nose to the grind, getting some of that project work done. We see a lot of that now. On the other hand, as far as kind of moving towards silos, it really just depends on what the nature of the business or what the nature of the tasks that we're talking about. So, like I said, as much as I'm working a lot more with, for instance, our finance groups who do have some bandwidth to be able to help me with some tasks. There are many of my technical teams who, a lot of the tasks that I would have to rely on them on, I have to kind of do some of that, at least the administrative parts by myself. It starts to kind of become siloed where I kind of have to make some calls on my own, or at least put the task off until they can be re-engaged. Even in the distance learning, taking it out of the professional arena. With my daughter, as much as we are getting the instructions still and the assignments, which are still going pretty well with the classes that my daughter is taking, uh, it's a lot more siloed now. She is still having to kind of hunker down, with the iPad, with the remote lessons, and just kind of do that work as opposed to working with her classmates, working with direct instruction from her teacher. So it's a little bit of both, but I think that for the most part, truly it is the latter. Folks are seeing that, and even socially. I mean, I can't tell you how many Zoom calls that I've been on with family and friends who I otherwise would not have been speaking to over the past month, mainly because when the sky was open and I could talk to them anytime, I could talk to them anytime. But now that we have these kind of constraints, oh, I'm very concerned. How are they doing? And so now I find that people are talking to each other more, and I really hope that when things start to get back to business as usual, that some of these lessons, some of these things that people have been reflecting on, kind of carry over into the day-to-day life.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned business as usual, right? The Governor Newsom here in California
Mm-hmm.
has come out over the last couple of days and said, "Hey, we have this 6-phase plan that we're working on,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still really in phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
That means we've got 4 more phases that hit." And he's basically coming out and saying, "Hey, look, it's probably going to be like this for several more weeks." What I'm hearing from many people is, looking end of May being in this, right? And you were talking about these silos and this, that we were talking about silos and collaboration and people working together and communicating more. But there comes a point in time where you are in the same space, and at work you can get up and walk around, or you can go grab a bite to eat, right? But we're in confined spaces, even though they're most people they're home. Um, what do you have as a suggestion as a project manager to help people regain focus back on a project that they need to work on?
Yeah, well, I'd say that one thing that is really helpful for people to do is to make sure that you give yourselves those mental breaks. I remember reading some time ago that there was a kind of a tip where, for even just something as simple as eye strain, for every 20 minutes that you're looking at the screen, you should take 20 seconds and divert your eyes to somewhere else and just kind of rest your eyes, or just look at something else other than the screen. The same goes for even speaking mentally, being able to take a walk outside, or if you have your family or your children around with you, take those breaks, go outside. Thankfully, we're not in a situation where we have to stay inside. The air is really poisonous or toxic or something like that. We do have the latitude to be able to at least, step outside, social distance from one another, taking that vitamin D wherever you can get it. And so all those things are just the little ways that, even though you're technically getting off task by taking a break, I think go a long way as far as maintaining the longevity of your kind of mental stamina.
Yeah, very good. Sorry, I had to let my dog out.
No problem.
And I hit the wrong button, but we could hear you talking there. So, yeah, I mean, I think those are really great things, Jeremy. I could hear you when I was standing right outside, and in fact, it's almost like letting a dog out. What you were talking about, right? Going out and getting that breath of fresh air to do it. Maybe another thing that we could discuss really quickly is kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you have younger kids, and I have younger kids too, and they get so much energy. And it's really hard to have a child stick to an agenda, right? They're kind of like what the movie Up, right? Squirrel. So what are your tips that you do with your kids to help them stay focused on that agenda, to keep on task, especially when it comes to like school and that type of stuff, right? Because I know with my kids, I can motivate them by saying, "Hey, you get this done early, then you can go outside and play and run around and have what's done." But that doesn't work with every child. And I've got two kids who love agendas, like their mother, and then I've got another child who's more like me, who's kind of like, "Oh, let's just see how the day goes, and we'll do stuff we need to get done." So, I mean, what's the balance there? What's the good balance there?
Yeah, well, I mean, realistically, that's a big can of worms that you're opening there as far as parenting is concerned, and I know that you have experienced it firsthand. But in general, you're kind of on the right track there. That it's what is the turn of phrase? Different strokes, right? So you've got some kids who can be easily incentivized or fit well with following an agenda. And I know that for my daughter, incentivizing, as much as I try not to boil being productive down to do this, you get a thing. As much as we can, we do have to sometimes rely on those kind of measures. And luckily, the teacher in her class is very good about putting videos on the distance learning, the normal kind of book readings that she would do with the class. I kind of utilize those as those incentives. But for, like you said, the cases where you have a child where those incentives are not really kicking in, or they kind of buck at the rigidity of an agenda or something, that's the part where, like I said, you have to be able to reflect and reprioritize. And, speaking from a parental perspective, I mean, you know your child best. And as much as you have a goal, you've set your agenda, at some point you have to step back and say, okay, well, is it feasible to really force my kid to follow the activities to a T at this moment? Or is this a case where we have some of that leeway to let's do this later on? At some point, you walk that line between recognizing responsibilities, kind of teaching your child, whether they're in TK or in high school, that there are objectives, there are goals that you are responsible, accountable for meeting. But at the same time, certainly because of the nature of the situation that we're in, being sympathetic, being flexible, being able to accommodate different ways of meeting those same objectives. So that means that right now, your child needs to kind of, get the wiggles out, go outside for a little bit, then, certainly parents should have that ability to make those discretionary calls. So yeah, it's kind of just walking that line,
It's almost like what you would do for yourself to move forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking anything that's really difficult here. What we're talking about is really recognizing what you need to get the work done and what your children need to get the work done, right?
I agree.
So, Jeremy, I know it's about 6:00 at night, and I know my family usually eats around 6:30, and I know you have a young family too. I want to be really conscious of the time that you're giving. I really appreciate that. So I know you've been
Sure.
working really hard, doing plenty of things, that type of stuff, including, you and I have been working together using services to provide um, uh, spiritual services, masses for
Right.
Our Lady of Grace Church. Did you want to touch on that at all about how that's been going on your end? I mean, I've been producing stuff
Mhm.
for the church on my end from the comfort of my home, but you've actually been hands-on down at the church
Yeah.
doing things, which I think is amazing and commendable. I mean, you've done a
Thank
great
you.
job, and I've had a lot of fun working with you and getting it done.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you would like to tell people out there who are thinking about trying to do this? Maybe their church doesn't already do it. Their church is looking at doing it. Any suggestions or tips you would have for people who want to do that, or people who are just looking to do something like we're doing right now? Any tips, thoughts, ideas?
Yeah, sure. You know what? It all still boils down to one of those tips I shared earlier, as far as communicating and what is truly the impetus for why communicating is worthwhile, because it keeps us engaged. So while you brought up the spiritual services, the things that we do with our church, uh, I've made mention that professionally and even socially, it's more important than ever that we continue to reach out to one another and engage one another. So, as far as anyone out there who might be thinking about maybe doing something with the church or making a recommendation for the church who isn't already availing of those kind of services, the the technical things, they can come. We can shoot off a quick list of easily accessible solutions that folks could avail of. But when you get down to it, you just have to ask yourself, what is truly the motivation for wanting to do that? Do you feel that your services, whether it's at a church or it's because of your work or even with your family, do you feel that what it is that you are offering or attempting to do is serving some purpose? And hopefully that purpose being keeping people engaged and connected. So that's the first thing that I would make the recommendation there. That do you feel that you are meeting that, I guess, value or that burden? And if that is the case, if you are truly in service to the pursuit of keeping people engaged, then hey, right on, excellent. So it doesn't matter if it is church services, it doesn't matter if it is a vlog that you're doing, or if you're just kind of putting stuff out there for entertainment. In fact, I've recently come across a series of videos like on YouTube. There's all kinds of parody videos nowadays that, I mean, these things, of course, predate and have existed well before any of these COVID response measures kicked into place. But I don't know about you, but if you go on there into YouTube, there's no shortage of videos that are, uh, timely themed about quarantines and sheltering in, and they are all very clever, and many of them are very well done. But at its heart, what are we getting out of those? What is it that those folks are offering us? They're offering us a way to, one, have a little bit of entertainment to break up some of the monotony of just staying inside, as well as a way for us to all relate, because this is not just somebody's pet project of, oh, this is a topic that we have cartoon characters or princesses that are going to be in modern day, and we'll make it kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. But no, they're talking about stuff that's very topical, relatable to nearly 100% of us globally, not even nationally, globally, together. And in that respect, I definitely applaud those folks who are doing that. So for anyone out there listening and thinking to yourself that, what, I want to do my part to help us stay engaged, either my family, my home, my school, community, whatever. Yeah, whatever the ideas are, as long as what you're doing are seeking to kind of maintain those connections, then right on, right on. All power to you, and we certainly have tips and suggestions for you if you want to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, it has been fun. It's been a lot of work, but it
Hmm.
has been fun, and it's been finding the right tools that work for us and that type of stuff.
Hmm.
So, just one more question. One more
Yes.
question before I let you go. and this one may be a little bit more of a fun thing. What are you and your family doing that A is bringing you closer together as a family, and B is helping to either increase and or renew your faith right now?
Well, um, one thing that we have been doing, cooking and um, eating more together. In fact, and you know, as much as the current epidemic, the situation is, there's terrible loss of life. There's all the hardships, not to mention the social, the economic impacts that we globally are going to be feeling for several weeks, months, dare say even years after all this. Despite all of those hardships that are going on, there are still silver linings to be found, and one of those being that it did has forced many people, myself included, to slow down. Prior to all of this, I had a jam-packed schedule where night after night I had different extracurricular activities that were going on or different services that I was doing, and my daughter would actually, kind of remark, like, "Man, why does my dad have to be so busy all the time? I can't even eat dinner with him or spend time with him properly." And now, what is the byproduct of all this? She sees me all the time. Wake up, there I am. Go to sleep, there I am. Everything in between, there I am. And even just preparing dinner and then getting to sit down at the dinner table every single night, which is something that, again, outside of COVID, we should be striving to do for a lot of families out there. That wasn't feasible because of whatever responsibilities or activities folks have taken on. And now here we are kind of compelled to, no, we actually get back to that. And that's truly a blessing. That's really a great opportunity for my family, at least, and I'm sure a lot of other families. And as far as being able to make use of the online services, the virtual church services, that's one thing that has really helped my family still be able to continue to pray and keep my daughters spiritually attuned. And also, we're part of different groups that do online prayers outside of the church setting, praying novenas and the rosary and other kinds of prayer groups that just kind of meet on Zoom or whatever other kind of conference calls that are out there. And, making sure that the kids are included in that. That say, oh, go sit over here in the corner, watch your iPad. We make them a part of those kind of things. So, again, it's just we're all around each other all the time, and sometimes it can grate a little bit, but as much as possible, we are all kind of being patient and sticking with it together and making the most of this situation, as I would imagine many families out there are doing.
Yeah, that's what I hear from a lot of people, and that's really awesome. It's awesome to hear that you're including your children in the prayer groups and prayer service and stuff like that.
Mm,
Sometimes people feel maybe apprehension to do that because they
mm,
don't, are worried about how their children react. I found in my case, I'm sure you probably find the same, is that my kids are actually kind of interested because it's something that I
mm,
and that my wife
mhm,
and they want to know, like, well, why are mom and dad taking their time out to do this?
mm.
And then all of a sudden they see people they recognize and they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? Right? And
Right, right.
they're like, oh, wait a second. Like, I know those people. I've seen
Mm,
those people before. You're just doing what you do normally, but on the computer. So,
mm,
yeah, I think it's really good. I think I can probably echo what you were saying. We always try to strive to sit down for dinner, but I had so
mm,
many meetings and so many things going on
mhm,
that my kids actually, I mean, I was, as you know, I was doing a ton of stuff for the school, and my kids actually kind of said to me, like, Dad, you need to like do more with us about school than doing stuff
mhm,
for the school. And
mhm,
that happened before the whole COVID thing came about. So it's really awesome to hear that there are tons of other people out there like yourself, um, that are doing that, and I can only hope that these video series that we're doing here and
mhm,
the stuff that we're doing with the mass and that type of stuff, if it hits, I tell people all the time, if it hits just one person, then we've done something good. Uh,
right,
and
right.
I think that's what it's all about. And kind of echoing again what you were saying,
Mm,
it's about trying to, yeah, it's about trying to put out there great content, but it's if you can make an effect in one person's life. Uh,
mhm,
And I know for me that's what it is. I know for you within our conversations and from what you said this evening, that's what it is too. And I really want to say, I appreciate everything that you and I have worked on together and
Mm.
other stuff that you've done past that. I consider you a friend, and I really had a good time working with you, and I look forward to continue doing that here as things go on, even post COVID-19.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
gets there soon. And I know you've got a lot of great ideas about things, and have a really wonderful mindset of stuff, and you're just a really positive person to be around. So I appreciate that. And I guess I gotta have one more question for you. I know
Okay.
you're in a band. Are
Mm.
you guys practicing, and are you using like technology to practice?
There are tools available to enable those kind of connections. But a lot of the members in my band, I'm actually in a cover band, a Beatles cover band. We're called Revolution Beat, tribute to the Beatles. Half of the members of my group are on the on the elderly side, and they are a little bit technologically challenged. So, no, we actually don't have a lot of the remote distance practicing going on. But they're a good group of guys, and we've been playing together for, I think this is our 5th year now. So
Awesome.
so far, I'm not anticipating us uh, losing too much. Not going to lose a step or two or anything through this, but hopefully we can get back to it, playing music, getting out there with our fans, as well as just getting back to life as we know it, embracing one another, or maybe just still social distancing a little bit there. Head
Yeah.
nods, close head nods. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Michael, for inviting me. And like I made mention before, for anybody who out there who has any ideas or desire to go out there and do something, whether it's services, blogs like this, or sharing of information, as long as you're coming from a place where you really feel that you have something to add to the effort of keeping the world at large engaged, like you certainly do, sir. Commend you for that. Then go do that. I highly encourage you, go do that, whatever the idea is.
Awesome. Well, again, Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for some of your insight and professional wisdom that you've given, and then some of the personal tips that you've given too that have worked for you. Hopefully, people are watching and taking some of that and trying to figure out how to make it on their own too. So I appreciate you again taking your time this evening and everything else that you do, man. Have a great night, and you guys stay healthy.
You too. Thank you.
All right, bye.